History as McCarthy is ousted as Speaker. Victoria Spartz threatens resignation, plus gubernatorial candidates on leap and more. From the television studios at WFYI, it's Indiana Week in Review for the week ending October 6th, 2023.
Indiana Week in Review is made possible by the supporters of Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations.
This week, the U.S. House voted 216 to 210 in favor of a motion to remove California Republican Kevin McCarthy from his position as Speaker. The first time in history a U.S. House Speaker has been ousted that way. McCarthy's ouster was led by Florida Republican Matt Gaetz, who, along with 7 other Republican members, voted to remove McCarthy as Speaker, along with all Democrats present. Gaetz said it was McCarthy's decision to join with Democrats on a short-term deal to keep the government funded that led to the motion to vacate. All 7 Indiana Republican representatives voted to keep McCarthy in the role, while the Hoosier State's 2 Democrats voted to remove him. While Representative Patrick McHenry is interim Speaker, it's unclear who will replace McCarthy long-term. Indiana Congressman Jim Banks has thrown his support in early for Ohio Republican Jim Jordan. What will be the political fallout from this week's chaos in the House? It's the first question for our Indiana Week in Review panel. Democrat Ann DeLaney. Republican Mike O'Brien. John Schwantes, host of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly, editor-in-chief of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. I'm Indiana Public Broadcasting State House Bureau Chief Brandon Smith. Ann DeLaney, if you were a House Democrat, would you have voted to keep Kevin McCarthy as Speaker? Because given what's likely to come, I'm imagining you're not going to be more of a fan of who the next Speaker is than you were of Kevin McCarthy. So was it worth it for Democrats to keep him in power?
I don't think they could vote for him. I mean, obviously, he's no Nancy Pelosi, but on top of that, he doesn't even know how to lead. He sold his soul to the right-wing MAGA Republicans to get the power, all right? And it was guaranteed from the beginning that any kind of compromise to keep the government going, to deal with the problems we face, were going to be doomed by those 8 or 10 crazy people on the Republican side. So I don't know what they're going to do with this, but the chaos isn't over. Because there are people putting themselves forward like Jim Jordan who are, they're a disgrace to the House of Representatives. So I don't know what the Republicans are going to do, but they're showing people all around the country that they can't govern. So I think it's going to cost them the majority, and it's a good thing it does.
The question I asked at the top was, what is going to be the political fallout from this? I don't think the next Speaker of the House is going to be more moderate than Kevin McCarthy. At least it doesn't seem that way right now. It looks right now like it might be Jim Jordan. Donald Trump is apparently throwing his support behind Jordan. Mike Braun came out today and said Jordan would be a good choice. Obviously, Jim Banks was ahead of that. He was ahead of that train for sure.
Absolutely.
Is this going to be trouble for House Republicans in swing districts next fall?
There's not a lot of those left, first of all.
That's true.
17 of them.
But it's a narrow majority there right now.
But it's a narrow majority. You can look back at McCarthy and say, you never should have cut that deal. Okay, well, does he even ever get in? Does he get in on the 15th vote or no vote? Yeah. So it's easy to look back and say, well, you never should have done that. Of course, this is what.
Although to be fair, I don't even think in hindsight, like there were people at the time saying this is not going to turn out well for you.
Right.
100%. But in that, is it better to go, well, then I'm walking away, I can't get the votes, or is it better to get elected Speaker and go, all right, I'm going to try and figure this out from within, which is not unusual, not an irrational decision.
No,
I don't think in the moment, but it's, and yes, this is historic, but also no one's ever tried, no one's ever agreed to that before, where you have a one-man guillotine that can cut the head of the party off,
right?
And so and it's like a Rubik's cube of irrational political decision making. So the hardliners now go against their own caucus because their own caucus sided with the Democrats to keep the government open, but the hardliners had to side with the Democrats to oust their own speaker. It's
chaos.
It's chaotic, and now you layer on top of that, here comes the presidential field. It's staking out.
Talking about making Trump
staking
the
out
speaker.
who the next or making Trump the speaker, which.
It seems unlikely.
And so
seems unlikely. Let me just say that.
It's hard to see a path forward where you can even. Okay, well, now you acquiesce to those 8. It's worth remembering that these 8 and enough of these decisions become the establishment. They're not the radicals anymore. Now they're the establishment that's pulling the strings and it's falling apart.
Yeah. There's supposed to be a vote next week for the new speaker. I don't know if that vote's going to take place or if it does, if we're going to have a new Speaker of the House. But then, let's not forget that in
45 days.
yeah,
or
and
actually
less
than
now,
45
less
days.
than about 40 days or even less, we have to figure out whether or not we're going to keep the government
open.
going or not. Is that
Or support Ukraine and do all
or
these other
support
things.
Ukraine,
Right,
support
yeah.
border security, which might be tied together? I mean, is there going to be business done in the U.S. House of Representatives for the foreseeable future?
Well, I do like the analogy of the Rubik's Cube that Mike uses. With
I never
one
solved any of those. by
with
the
one
way.
exception. I was going to say,
I tried. I peeled the stickers
some
off.
bright kid
I'd cheat.
somewhere can usually do it blindfolded, upside down with his feet or her
Right.
feet. And I don't think 435 people in the House and Senate, or 535 with the House and Senate, if you look at all Congress as a whole, are going to be able to solve this. It seems, unlike the Rubik's Cube,
There's no step two with
there
that.
is
There
no
are no
solution.
adults.
There's
There's no step two
There's
to
no
this.
guide, no instructions. We're clearly in uncharted water here. I think several things. You ask about the upshot. We'll probably see some rule changes so that you can't have a one-person guillotine anymore, or it would be more difficult maybe to have.
There are plenty of representatives who are saying, you keep that or I'm not going to vote for you as
Right.
Speaker,
Well,
too.
I grant you that, but you also have, if anybody's unpopular right now, within both caucuses, probably the House, the House Republicans and House Democrats, is probably Matt Gaetz. I don't think he's.
We're kind of back to our roots with the House of Commons. It's like we're just going to reorganize.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's,
We'll just rebuild. We'll just recreate the government every time we come to an impasse.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's a
it
little
is sort
bit
of the
of what it is
parliamentary
right now.
system. But the other thing will have the rule change, and then we're going to see lip service, I think, paid. We're already seeing it to the notion of pragmatism. We're tired of the circus. You know, how many times have we heard that this week? We're going to get things done. Easy to say, much tougher to do.
In terms of what this means for, again, next fall, part of the calculation, I think, by House Democrats here is likely maybe, well, if we let them go to pieces, it's going to make our jobs that much easier come fall of 2024 to make the case that they cannot be allowed to govern. Do you think that's some of what's going on here?
I mean, maybe a little, though. A year is pretty much a long way away in politics. Now we're going to have a Fox News debate of the House Speaker
gosh, I haven't seen
candidates.
that.
Yes, that just came
Wow.
out today. They're going to debate next week, the House Speaker candidates. So that's fascinating. I saw someone say, and I think this was an excellent point, that Kevin McCarthy's mistake was that he tried to govern. And it's kind of true, you know. He put that deal together at the last minute to keep the country from shutting down, and it was all over from there.
Which argues that that's not what they want to do.
Yeah.
They want the chaos.
There are at least
those
8 of
few.
them. At
least
least
those
8
few.
of them.
But as long as the Republican caucus allows them to determine
But
the
the problem
agenda.
is, they don't have a majority of
have
more
two
than
to
8.
give.
I mean,
That's right.
they have such a small majority that they're almost
That's
held
when
hostage.
that's when you have an adult go and talk to the Democrats about forging a coalition.
that's right.
which,
And
that
which
is how you strip
McCarthy
these guys of
wouldn't do
power,
it.
which is what he did last week, which is what he did
And
Saturday.
right.
Well,
Look at
and-
what he
and
did.
marginalized
they
him for about
came
1
through.
minute.
They
you
came
talk about,
through.
though,
So
Ann,
we'll
you talk
require
about
that
cracking
again.
down on these Republicans. What are you going to do? The talk this week was, well, we'll consider maybe, perhaps, the notion of kicking them out of the conference. So they get an extra hour on their calendar each week because they don't have to go to a meeting every
but
Wednesday.
You deal in good faith. You don't renege like McCarthy did. You deal in good faith with the Democrats, and you come up with a governing coalition.
That would be one of the
The
more
adult thing.
nowadays. That would be
Well,
pretty
that's what,
remarkable to see.
and that's what you were looking at on Saturday. But
Right.
of course, in this environment, the Democrats were going to side with the hardline right to take the speaker out and make it look like chaos. Of course, that was going to happen.
But they couldn't trust McCarthy. He reneged on the deal he cut with Biden after what, 4 months? You couldn't trust him.
Time now for viewer feedback. Each week we pose an unscientific online poll question. And this week's question is, should Democrats have helped keep Kevin McCarthy in the U.S. House speakership? A, yes, or B, no. Last week we asked you who would be to blame if there had been a federal government shutdown. 3% said the Democrats, 76% said the House Republicans, and 21% said both parties would have been to blame. If you'd like to take part in the poll, go to WFYI.org/IWIR and look for the poll. Well, John referenced referring to the House as a circus earlier. U.S. Representative Victoria Spartz is threatening to resign if Congress doesn't create a commission this year to study ways to reduce the national debt. Spartz vented her frustrations in a statement this week, calling Congress a circus with a complete absence of leadership, vision, and spine. Political scientist Andrew Downs says Spartz's concerns about the debt are not new. The surprise, he says, is the threat.
And the threat, I think, comes across for many as an escalation or an elevation of frustration she clearly has been feeling. She already announced she's not going to run for re-election. She expressed the lack of movement and productivity in the chamber at that time.
Spartz cited struggles with being away from her high school-aged children when she announced she wouldn't run for re-election, and she referenced her kids again in the threat to resign. Downs says those struggles are legitimate, and it's fair to ask whether Spartz is just looking for a way to step down early.
If she's really that frustrated, theoretically, she should just say, I'm out.
If Spartz resigns, the governor would have to call a special election to fill her seat, and with a slim GOP majority in the House, losing a Republican member for even a little bit of time makes Spartz's threat more potent. Mike O'Brien, how seriously should her constituents and us take this resignation threat?
Well, I mean, you look at her public statements all week. She was in the press a lot this week, and this was kind of, and it all culminated in this, kind of ultimate. I don't know if it's ultimatum or threat, but so there was nothing that she said all week or in recent weeks that leads me to believe that she's not frustrated enough to walk away. Yeah. Now, if you're trying to use that as leverage to get for some policy goal, it undercuts your for the people that maybe aren't for you or who are standing in your way.
It's fine
for you to accomplish your public policy aim, then of course, then what a great deal for them. You get to go. You're going home, and I can go do whatever I want, which wasn't what you wanted anyway. Great, that's fine. She's out of her hair, but I don't think there's a lot of disagreement in what she said or when she said it. I think a lot of people were feeling that way. I'd hope she'd see it through. I would hope she would see it through, just so we're not in another one of these scenarios where we're having to go find somebody, and we're just taking out another leg of the process. Yeah, I mean, I noted in the piece, but we just talked about how narrow this House majority is and how much pressure that's putting on the ability of the House and the House Republican caucus to do anything. So that makes this threat more potent. Is this one vote matters a lot?
Yes, one vote matters.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
more than usual. More than usual. One vote matters a lot.
One vote matters a lot. Her vote, I mean, if she's there or if she's gone, other than the fact that the majority is so narrow, it makes no difference. She had the opportunity to be a champion for the Ukraine, to stand up and carry the water on that issue. And instead, she felt so sympathetic to Putin that she backed off. I mean, the idea that she is Luke Kenley and then Susan Brooks' successor is appalling to me. I mean, they gave her the Senate, the House, the Indiana Senate seat.
Not exactly.
And then,
they didn't give it to her. She had to fight hard for that in that caucus.
Yeah, in the caucus among.
Yes,
yeah,
in the
okay,
caucus.
come on. And then on top of that, when the race was close for her House seat, they created a district for her that even she couldn't lose, and she walks away from it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's. I don't care how frustrated she is. All right, she has a duty to represent the people who voted for her and to finish out that term. And if she doesn't, shame on her.
We hear politicians constantly say, "I'm stepping away to spend more time with my family." So much so that you sometimes have trouble believing it nowadays. This is very.
Sometimes have trouble believing it.
But this is incredibly real. She has two high school-age daughters, and they made the decision that they were going to stay back here in Indiana while she's in D.C. with their with her husband, their dad, and that's been really, really hard for that family, and that's why she's not going to run for re-election. Should she stick out this last year or so, though?
Look, I don't know anything personally about her family situation. If you're saying that, I don't know that for sure, but that's no different than any other of the 435 members. I'm very big on fulfilling your commitments, and I understand things happen, but to me, that statement was so full of sort of self-aggrandizement and a little bit of martyrdom. I'm trying so hard and I can't do this alone.
On my own or alone.
That it was, I'm going to take my ball and go home kind of thing. And so I'm not sure how that plays well with constituents.
John, kind of back to what Mike was saying. Is this threat? I believe her. But is that going, especially after what we just talked about, I mean, they're going to struggle to get the things done that they absolutely have to get done this year, let alone creating a commission. Like, that's my thing, too. She's saying, I will resign unless you study this issue. Like, is that worth threatening your resignation over?
I wouldn't think so. And at what point, I guess, maybe this is a rhetorical question, when you're complaining about the circus and everything being in disarray, does your threat to walk out and take your ball and go home not add to the, I mean, is she not the carnival barker? I'm mixing my metaphors with circus and carnival. But is she not the one saying, step right up, look what I'm doing, I'm going to resign? And she has sort of thought out loud about leaving since the day she essentially took office. Like, I want to go get a PhD, I want to go do this, I'm going to go almost sort of, I mean, very much Hamlet-like, to be or not to be from day one. So you almost wish for constituents that somebody would make up one's mind early in the process so they could get the guaranteed, not the guaranteed, but they would get the service that they elected. But she's been, in recent weeks, she went after Merrick Garland, comparing, just a week and a half or so ago, comparing the Justice Department to the KGB and talking about how Americans are afraid. And then she got trounced with an amendment to the appropriations bill last week, where she took on, agricultural checkoffs, which I think she got 49 votes, which in this era of hyper-partisanship, when you're on the losing end and you get 48 others with you, that shows you're on the wrong side. So there's a lot of frustration, I think, that's all culminating now in this sort of the excuse for her frustration.
Indiana Republican gubernatorial candidates weighed in this week on controversy surrounding the LEAP district, the large high-tech industrial district in Lebanon. A chief source of angst surrounding the expensive development is a proposal to move millions of gallons of water a day from the Lafayette area down to the LEAP district. Fort Wayne businessman Eric Doden says he's deeply concerned about that plan, while former Attorney General Curtis Hill told the Indiana Capital Chronicle such an idea shows the LEAP project isn't feasible. Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch and U.S. Senator Mike Braun both expressed support for the LEAP district generally, while acknowledging concerns about some of the logistics and a lack of communication from state officials. Former Secretary of Commerce Brad Chambers, who led the Indiana Economic Development Corporation throughout the LEAP district development, was unsurprisingly supportive of the project. John Schwantes, in this primary with so many heavy hitters all vying for this coveted position, they're trying to find things to differentiate themselves on. Can this become one of those issues?
I think it has more potential than some of the other trial balloons that had been sent up, which essentially all sort of fizzled. If you look up in the recipe book of how to make a good wedge issue, this has all the ingredients, because there's populism on the one side where you have sort of the government elitists or corporate interests against the small farmer or mom and pop Hoosier who just want to know, will I still have water coming out of my well when I turn on the faucet? And then you layer into it the whole notion of transparency and sort of the arrogance of decision making, which you could make an argument that kind of decision-making is necessary in the crucible of economic development deals, but still, it's an easy thing to say, look at all this money that was spent on this assessment, the design of this pipeline, when in fact we didn't even know at that point when that contract was let whether there's sufficient water. And now the company, the engineering firm that did the water assessment was hired essentially and endorsed by the IEDC. So you get all this, the common thing, you get the themes of elite behind-the-scenes decision-making versus, and again, I'm not saying that there's a good white hat and a black hat here, but it has the elements of
that way.
It's gray.
Everything is for me. Everything's gray for me.
There's also the question, I think, now that especially the gubernatorial candidates have started to weigh in, and only one person is unqualified, like, yes, this is great, we should keep moving forward. And of course, it's the guy who's been running, whose idea this was, who's been running it up until recently. But if you're trying to attract a really big company to come and move to Indiana to come to this park, isn't that company looking at who the next governor will be in a little over a year and going, well, I don't know if they're still going to be supportive of this a year from now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but obviously, the land's already been bought. I mean, they've put hundreds of millions into this already. So how they deal with the water is obviously a big one. I think Eric Doden did exactly what he needed to do because he and Brad Chambers essentially have the same background. And so
very
he
similar profiles.
differentiated himself from Brad Chambers on this. I was a little more surprised by how strident Curtis Hill's statements on it were. Eric Doden was deeply concerned, but Curtis Hill was just flat out, look, if you don't have the water for it, it's not feasible. Like, why are we talking about this, And so I think it's a great issue in the governor's race to talk to them about. I'm glad that the candidates, aside from Mike Braun, who did not return, I don't think most reporters' calls on this or looking for statements, are ready to be on the record about how they feel on this topic, because it's obviously one that a lot of people are asking about.
I think, especially with something like Curtis Hill's statement, I know you probably don't agree with Curtis Hill very often here, Ann.
I can't remember the last time I did, actually.
But, I mean, you look at the idea of we are in a good position in most of Indiana, if not all of Indiana right now, when it comes to water. But that is not always going to be true. And looking forward, can you move this much water for an industrial park when you might need it just for people somewhere else down the line? So
well,
is this begging?
I do think that's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
And we are actually officially in a drought and have been for the last 2 years. So I think the assumption we've always made is that we're in a temperate rainforest and it's going to be here, but at least the trend is not in that direction. So I think that is concerning. It's also interesting to see the conflict between the two of them and the transparency. All right, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars. In some cases, they've spent outrageous amounts of money to acquire that land. And my tax dollars at work, $100,000 an acre? Come on.
I asked, going back to the question I asked at the beginning, can this become sort of a key wedge issue in this primary?
Yes.
It's not complicated. There are a lot of issues at play here. Can you make it simple enough for primary voters to go, yes, I agree with candidate A and not with candidate B?
Well, for the four serious ones, which Curtis Hill not being one of them, who just came out and hammered it like we've never had to bring utilities to a major development project, private or public, before, which is an absurd statement, in my opinion. The other four, one of them's going to have to own it. So they've got to think a little harder about how hard am I coming out against this? Am I going to go beat Brad Chambers over the head? And maybe that works, but now I win and now I've got to go make this project work. It's a little bit like, this project's becoming a little bit like the toll road lease, just as an analogy, because it's this out-of-the-box idea that isn't brand new. And if you zoom out into the nation or the world. It's hotly controversial. It's really easy to demagogue. It's farmers and pitchforks types of issue. But you got to be a little more responsible as one of these other candidates for governor in terms of expressing caution where you think, we need to think this through, and to the point of the feasibility study was paid for by the government. Well, it's the government's project. Of course it was paid for by the government. Who's going to step up and go, no, I'll take care of your water problem for you?
But it isn't surprising that if the government pays for the feasibility study, that the feasibility study agrees with the program.
Yeah, but
look,
again,
the government's going to have to manage this the way the government always has to manage this. I mean, we do have to manage. The government does have to manage water resources, and it's a government. It's a fairly new. It's a brand new concept in Indiana. It's of course certainly on this scale, and it's going to require. I'd rather listen to the water engineers than Curtis Hill on whether or not we can get water to a
You don't like
to a
Curtis
project.
either?
One of the longest-serving members of the Indiana House announced this week he will not seek re-election next year. Republican Jerry Torr plans to retire after nearly 3 decades in the General Assembly. Torr was first elected in 1996 and will serve out his 14th term in office. He says serving in the House was the honor of a lifetime, but that he looks forward to focusing fully on his career in title insurance. Torr helped lead some of the most controversial legislation in the House in the last 2 decades. That includes the shift to daylight saving time in 2005 and making Indiana a right-to-work state in 2012, banning union contracts from requiring non-union employees to pay fees for representation. Torr's retirement will also potentially be a test of political shifts in Carmel, a northern suburb of Indianapolis. Democrats have gained there in recent years and have targeted Torr the last couple of cycles. An open seat could be an opportunity for Democrats to make further gains in the traditional Republican stronghold. Nikki Kelly, what is Jerry Torr's legacy in the House?
Gosh, wow. I mean, his name has been attached to a ton of big bills, whether it be daylight saving time or right to work, stuff like that. I mean, to me, his legacy is that he was always someone you could approach to talk about topics. You know, he didn't shy away from, you know, having policy discussions, and plus he has the best euchre presentation to teach someone to play euchre I've ever seen.
It's a PowerPoint presentation.
so
It's
good.
remarkable. Very, very quickly, we have a Republican, Danny Lopez, former chief of staff or deputy chief of staff to the governor. We have a Democrat, Matt McNally, who's already been running in that district. This is going to be one of the most competitive next year.
Oh,
yes.
I think a lot of eyeballs will be on that. It's going to be more competitive than ever because of changing demographics of the suburban areas. So one to watch for sure.
All right. That's Indiana Week in Review for this week. Our panel is Democrat Ann DeLaney, Republican Mike O'Brien, John Schwantes of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. You can find Indiana Week in Review's podcasts and episodes at wfyi.org/IWIR or on the PBS app. I'm Brandon Smith of Indiana Public Broadcasting. Join us next time because a lot can happen in an Indiana week.
The opinions expressed are solely those of the panelists. Indiana Week in Review is a WFYI production in association with Indiana's public broadcasting stations.